one of the things to kind of pivot it slightly in terms of, I think, you trying to focus on the issues where even if there is a big disagreement between you and one of your constituents, you know that this issue is something that's important. And, there's certainly no one doing more on healthcare in the city than yourself. Can you at least talk about, some of the work that you've seen and that you've tried to do with, especially around addiction, especially as the CDC is getting cut left and right, NIH, all these other things. Can you just talk about one, kind of what your experience is directly in Baltimore dealing with this issue, but how, now there's going to have to be some really tough conversations about what can we as a local government do now that we know that we might not have the backing of kind of some traditional services in DC. So can you talk about just like one, your work in the space, which I think is second to none also.
Yeah, sure. I can definitely talk about my work in the space. And just to give a little context, I am a public health scientist by training. And so I've worked at, the agencies that are being cut, the
Hmm.
NIH, the
Yeah.
FDA, the CDC, CMS. So I've worked in all
Yeah.
of, most of the government agencies. So my lens of healthcare and public health is a little bit different because I bring the Baltimore flavor and the Baltimore grit to it. We have seen in Baltimore just records amount of overdose and addiction that have plagued
Mhm.
our communities for generations. You have some sociologists that believe that it started in the 1990s. I could
Mhm.
argue and debate that it started after Vietnam,
Mhm.
particularly in Black communities. When we are looking at the plague of the opioid addiction within our city, we need to have a larger historical context than just simply after the crack era, simply,
Yeah.
within 2000s or 2010s, and even currently with the fentanyl crisis. So in the city of Baltimore, I'm taking a much broader and really a cultural approach to how we are approaching addiction. So most people, when they think of recovery, they simply think of, just putting people in
Yeah.
clinics, substance abuse
Mhm.
clinics, shipping them to a place where they are not close to their family. They are not close
Mhm.
to anything. You know what I'm saying? So they are very
Yeah.
isolated. Here in the city of Baltimore, we are integrating recovery into the everyday lives of our community. So we want to make sure that folks are connected with their families. They're not being connected to the environments that got them there, to the addiction in the first place. We're not saying that, but we know that folks, when they have an addiction, spiraling and making sure whatever trigger that may be, they have a coping mechanism and a network around them so that they don't relapse. And
Yeah.
so we are doing that here in the city of Baltimore. Mayor Scott has really worked through, from an executive side, some programming related to the opioid crisis. But my work centers on the actual laws, the legislative side. So making sure that our laws for behavioral health and substance abuse clinics do not exacerbate addictions. We don't have churn mills within Black
Yeah.
and Brown communities where we are just churning people out, in and out, in and out. We are making sure that we have behavioral health experts that are actually at the
Yeah.
table, not just simply people that want to make money. I had a meeting earlier this week, and I shared that folks believe that simply because you come into the city of Baltimore, the level and the standard of care is not there. And that goes for any Black community.
Mhm.
They're
Yeah.
just like, oh, we just gonna put it here, and we just gonna allow these people to just continue in a place of addiction, of non-helpful harm reduction recovery. And we just gonna do it anyway, because what are they gonna do about it? Now we about to call your bluff. We about to call your bluff in the city of Baltimore. So that's why we're all working in lockstep, creating laws, but also creating the enforcement mechanisms and partnerships at the state and federal level so that we can get these bad actors out of our communities. We don't see these types of bad actors in affluent communities. And you want to know why? I'm gonna give you want to know why? I, I'm, I'm,
Come on. Come on.
I'm
Keep
going
cooking.
to take you.
We're letting you roll.
I'm taking y'all to church
Yeah,
because
please.
because folks believe that they can just do it without any repercussions. That
Yeah.
is the issue. Sorry, y'all. That is the issue. Let me fix this one
No,
second.
you're good.
That is the issue. And I got a little excited. That is the
That's all
issue.
right.
Um, they believe that they can do it without repercussions. And there will be repercussions for you being in our communities and producing a non-quality forming and a sustainable approach to recovery. And so
And
that's what.
I especially love that because when we first started this, we interviewed a state representative in Georgia named Inga Willis, and she was also doing some really good work about trying to investigate and get some research on hair care products that we use, and kind of doing that same thing to just say, hey, if something is not clearly not working, and if the data says that something is not working, why aren't we questioning that? And I
Yes.
think I love the aspect. Can you speak even to just the importance of both enforcement? Because I do think that we kind of get lost in that we can write any rule, but if we're not able to slap away the bad hand, what
Yes.
are we really doing? But also just that aspect of actual programming.
Yes.
Because I think when people hear these ideas, they're like, what does that actually mean? And I'd love if you could speak a little bit more about just the aspect of what you're doing to have more behavioral health experts and just their actual importance, because I think we like to throw kind of money at a lot of these problems without recognizing that we actually need bodies in a lot of these communities and what the actual individuals who are needed to be. So can you talk a little bit about just one, out some of that stuff in terms of enforcement, but just also the need just to have more people, because that is important.
I sure can. So first, I'll talk about the enforcement capability. When people talk about enforcement, they're like, "Oh, Felicia, you're just wanting to just shut down
Yeah.
business." No, that's not what I'm talking about. If you're doing the right thing and you're acting in a way that is favorable to the community, that is in compliance with the full public health model, then we can have a conversation. But if you are not, you can't keep poisoning our communities. You can't keep allowing something to happen within our communities that furthermore is going to negatively impact Black and brown people for generations to come. So I'll give you an example. One of my major initiatives is really targeting bad actors of substance abuse and mental health clinics within the city of Baltimore. I believe that there's an oversaturation in the city of Baltimore, predominantly in Black and brown communities. On one commercial corridor alone, we have seven, and
Mm,
sometimes we have upwards of 11 that
yeah.
literally are plaguing our commercial corridors. They're plaguing our Black and brown communities. And I took a stance. I said, hey, we are not going to allow these clinics within our community. So hopefully, once the bill is introduced, I'll be taking
Mhm.
health clinics out of the zoning code classification for commercial corridors. And
Yeah.
that will essentially create a moratorium on those types of clinics on commercial corridors within the city of Baltimore. We have enough. It's not the quantity of the
Yeah.
clinics, it's the
Quality.
quality of the clinics. And that was a municipal level action that I introduced within my role and jurisdiction as city council. Now that prompts the state. That prompts
Hmm.
the state
Yeah.
to say, hey, they took healthcare clinics out of the commercial corridors within the city of Baltimore. Let me see what's happening in those current clinics,
Yeah.
so it's not growing the population.
Hmm.
It's essentially stopping the population from growing, and it's becoming a focus of those who are in community. And then from there, you'll see a series of legislation that come out of my committee that I chair about healthcare quality. What does a quality substance abuse and mental health clinic look like? How can you distinguish a good from a bad one?
Yeah.
What are the ways, what are the regulations at the state level that we can work with our Maryland General Assembly to ensure that we are not promoting and or replicating bad actors, and so it goes to not only just the zoning capabilities, but it goes to the partnership between local electeds and state electeds to get something done.